The final Esports World Cup qualifier was absolutely crazy. This was the last chance for teams to make the $1 million LAN. We had big duos dominate, we had huge names struggle, and we had an unexpected set of duos book their passage to the LAN. I'll break down the whole tournament for you in this video. So this was the fourth and final EWC qualifier, or the Reload Elite Series, whatever you want to call it. There were 3 spots left for European duos to qualify for the LAN to join the 9 teams that had already made it. Now let's start off by talking about the top 3 duos on the leaderboard, all of which had already qualified for the LAN. In first place we had Shxrk and T3eny, a magnificent display from them. They genuinely may be the single best reload duo in the world. The only team that can seriously challenge them is Peterbottom Poyo, and that's because both of these duos have won 3 out of the 4 EWC qualifiers. That is ridiculous consistency, just insane stuff. I do feel like reload just suits Shxrk and T3eny so well. They get a huge amount of area uncontested because everyone is so scared to fight them, but that doesn't stop Shxrk and T3eny from keying every game, from going crazy, playing like absolute psychos, and it always does seem to work out for them. As you can see from the stats, they had the most eliminations out of any team. Shxrk had the 3rd most eliminations individually, whilst T3eny was in 4th. I will discuss the top 2 later on in the video. They also won the last game in style to secure the 1st place finish. Excellent stuff from them. They are of course in incredible form right now. They of course came 2nd in the Divisional Cup this weekend. They're just playing out of their mind, and honestly most people did expect them to win because they've been so dominant in reload, and they didn't disappoint. Fair play to them. Now one thing to note about this current reload meta is that there are some very interesting additions, one of which being the super launchpad, and as you can see Shxrk and T3eny did take advantage of this particular item to make some pretty big rotates, and they were far from the only players to be doing this. A lot of pros were able to sit deep in the storm, and then they could simply rotate into the zone in one swift action. I do think these launch pads are a little bit too strong, and I hope they do get removed before the LAN in August. Now in 2nd place we had Shxrk and Pixie, and these guys are also in incredible form. They of course won the Divisional Cup this weekend, and following that up with a 2nd place where they narrowly lost out to Shxrk and T3eny is just insane stuff. They started the tournament in style with a 3rd, 2nd and 1st place in their first 3 games to give themselves a comfortable lead. Unfortunately Shxrk and T3eny are inevitable in reload, and there's no shame in losing to them, but 2nd place is still really solid. My last video was talking about how far they've come, how much they've improved as a duo, because when they initially formed they looked really good on paper, but the results simply weren't there. That has completely changed. They of course came 9th at the Summit LAN. They're qualified for this LAN. They have a Divisional Cup win now. They continue to look so solid. What a weekend it has been for this duo. Really impressive stuff, and I'm super excited to see if they can continue this form beyond the summer break. And in 3rd place, also already qualified for the LAN, we had Sky and Scroll, and it did feel like we saw the emergence of the top 3 European reload teams during this cup. Yes, they came 3rd, but they were very close behind the other 2. It was a really tight leaderboard at the top. This whole top 3 had already made LAN, and they played with such confidence, such class. It was super impressive from all 3 of these duos, so huge credit to them. Now the next 3 teams on the leaderboard are the duos that booked the final available spots for the Esports World Cup LAN, and let's just get straight into talking about them. In 4th place we had the French duo of Izzy and Nosif. Now these guys did make the Summit LAN, and they went into it as perhaps the least known European duo, but everyone's gonna know them now. Finally we are gonna have French players at a French LAN. Gone are the days of globals in Lyon where there were famously 0 French players at this LAN. That's not going to be the case in Paris, and these guys played great all throughout the tournament. They landed at this split right in the southeast of the map, which did work out quite well for them, but they had great awareness too. When Dom and Dimash were missing games, which I will talk about a bit more later on in the video, they were actually taking their POI. They did this in games 3 and 5. Great awareness, great recognition of that situation, and it did allow them to have a good few games, which ultimately made the difference between them qualifying or not. Listen, I do want to talk about the whole drop situation with reload in a bit more detail, because there was just so much chaos. A lot of the teams that did well in this cup were contested on the map, but it didn't really play out like that. You had teams just randomly dropping at different POIs at the start of games in order to get kills. So with Izzy and Nosif and the 2 duos that I'm going to talk about in just a moment, I wouldn't say any of them were properly contested despite what the map may say. I'll be honest though, with reload the lines between being conned and being unconned are completely blurred, because you have the respawn mechanic, because these POIs are quite splittable. It kind of doesn't really matter too much about your off-spawn situation. The only thing that's important is making it to the end game and getting deep, because honestly, you can have the perfect game, you can have the perfect off-spawn situation, you can try and make it into the end game, but if you come outside of that top 15, you're not even getting points. Let's not forget that you have to make it to the 9th or 10th zone just to unlock these placement points, purely because pretty much every single team makes it to the moving zones. So honestly, what happens off spawn is pretty trivial. We also need to remember the fact that you now respawn with solid loadouts when you do get eliminated, so the playing field is now very balanced. Even if you don't have the optimal drop situation, you can still do really well in this kind of tournament, and that is exactly what Izzy and nosif did. And just like the two duos that I'll get into in a moment, yes, they didn't have entire POIs uncontested, yes, they didn't have the perfect situation, but that isn't what matters in Reload. It's all about performing in the end games. So fair play to these guys, and of course I have to mention the stat that everyone is talking about. nosif has never made an FNCS Grand Finals, but this will be his second major LAN. He of course made the Summit LAN via the second chance qualifier round, and now he's qualified for the Esports World Cup. A huge achievement for him and Izzy, fair play to them. Also big credit to Izzy for having the second most eliminations out of any player in the entire cup, a huge fragging performance from him. Now in 5th place, also booking their spot at the Esports World Cup LAN, we had Skyjump and Mumsy. That's right, another French duo did perform. French Fortnite is officially back. What's even crazier is the fact that these guys aren't even actually playing together at the moment. The real duos for Battle Royale are Akira and Mumsy, and Skyjump and Karama. Now whether that stays the case, I don't know. I do feel like Skyjump and Mumsy should just get back together based on the quality of this performance. I'm really impressed with what I saw. They performed well, landing at this small split right at the north of the map. There were a lot of teams around them and it was a bit of a precarious situation, but as I've just mentioned, off spawn isn't the most important thing, and they did make their end games count. Really impressive stuff from them. And in 6th place, we had Cringe and Volko. Now looking at the leaderboard, you can see that it was super tight, but Cringe and Volko had an insane second half comeback to secure their spot. After 4 games, they were in 16th place. At the halfway point, they were nowhere near LAN qualification, but they came back in those final 4 matches with an average placement of 4.5 to secure their spot. They were even sat in 9th with 1 game left. They managed a huge performance in that final game to secure the qualification. Really impressive stuff from them. I mean, if you take a look at this leaderboard though, there was very little separating all those teams. We could easily have had a different set of duos qualify. The consistency was all over the place, but listen, when you get the 20 top European teams, it's tough to do well in every end game. When the format does reward getting super deep into the matches, you can finish in the 10th zone and you can get hardly any points. It's going to be very hard to maintain consistency unless you're in the top 3 duos, in which case you're just superhuman, I guess. So look, once again, fair play to these 3 duos, Izzy and nosif, Skyjump and Mumsy, and Cringe and Volko. Not the 3 teams that many people would have expected, but teams that definitely did deserve their spots, and I'm excited to see what they can do in Saudi Arabia. Now, please spare a thought for some of the teams that finished below them, because it was so tight, especially for Vexy and Shxrk, the Polish duo that finished on the exact same points as Cringe and Volko, but lost out on the tiebreaker for the eliminations. Gutting stuff for them. They were so close. It does feel like underrated Polish duos really seem to thrive in Reload. We saw Kashi and Firen do well in the last qualifier. Now Vexy and Shxrk taking over the torch, but they were so close. They did really well, and you know, they can be pretty upset that they didn't make it. In 8th place, we had Syaz and Scary Sean. Just like Cringe and Volko, they pulled off an insane comeback, but ultimately it wasn't quite enough. With 2 games left of the tournament, they were in 17th place out of 20 teams. That's ridiculous. The fact that they were able to get to 8th is an incredible achievement on its own. The fact that they nearly secured a LAN spot with that, I mean, they really did well in those last 2 games. And had they had a bit of a better start to the tournament, I know there were some games where they were getting very much farmed off spawn, which is the one dangerous aspect of the early game. Had that not happened, then maybe they could have booked their spot for LAN, but unfortunately for the Spaniards, it wasn't to be. They are already qualified for Globals. They did well at the Summit LAN, but the EWC was one step too far. Now continuing down the leaderboard, the points are still super tight. We had Vidil and Jew in 9th place. They started out really strong. They were in and around the qualification range for most of the tournament and narrowly missed out. Unfortunate for them. We had Dexy and Phyto in 10th, Rax and Yanis in 11th, both solid, both very close. There is really so little to separate all of these teams. We had such a crazy Game 8 finish. Rax and Yanis in particular put in a great performance in that final match, but unfortunately it just was not quite enough for them. Now, here's the rest of the leaderboard. A couple of things to note. You'll notice that Dom and Dimash didn't finish that high. Of course, they won Qualifier 3, so they have already made the LAN. They actually didn't get into 3 matches during this tournament. They had some serious queuing issues. I don't know what was going on for them. But interestingly, Dimash had the most kills and the most damage out of any player despite missing 3 games. That is just insane, and it makes you wonder, had they had those extra 3 matches, where would they have finished and how well would Dimash have done? A genuinely talismanic performance from Dimash, fair play to him. Now, the key point though from this leaderboard is that Focus and Th0masHD had a disaster of a tournament. They finished in 14th place, and this is a real shock. In my preview video for this tournament, I stated that they were an absolute lock to qualify. They were splitting Elite Armory every single match with Sky and Scroll. They really couldn't make the most out of it. And taking a look at the stats, you can honestly see why. Thomas only had 2 eliminations throughout the entire tournament, and that is pretty dismal, especially considering the fact that the Mammoth pistols are currently enabled in the game, which is an item that is basically designed for Th0masHD with his excellent sniper aim. So yeah, it was pretty disappointing. I will say that maybe that statistic doesn't tell the full story. Focus had 18 eliminations, 9 times as many as Thomas, but if you take a look at the damage stats, it was relatively close. Thomas also had the best damage ratio out of any player in the entire tournament, so that was a bit of a weird quirk, but honestly I don't need stats to tell you what I saw. It was a real underperformance from them. They weren't getting deep into their end games. There were some poor rotates. They were getting lobby sprayed. Focus did apparently have the audio bug in a few of the matches, which would kind of explain why they were underperforming, but still, I did just want to see way more from them. They actually won the first match. It was looking so promising, and then things just fell apart after that, and we won't be seeing Focus and Th0masHD at the Esports World Cup LAN. A real shame. So here's a list of all 40 teams that have now booked their spots to the Esports World Cup LAN. As you can see, 12 European representatives. I do feel like we are sending some pretty strong duos, as well as some underrated names that do deserve a bit more attention on the main stage. And here's the current map for the EWC. Obviously, it will be split into 2 lobbies for the first round, so this map doesn't really mean too much, but it's interesting to have a look at to see where teams are thinking of landing. Thank you very much for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with European Fortnite news. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.